After a year of chip export restrictions on China, the US cannot take it anymore. Each passing day is doubling the heavy cost of not selling chips to Chinese markets. Intel, Samsung, and Micron's inventories are tripling as there is no one to buy those chips. Yes, the US and its allies' chip companies are suffering badly, and their shrinking revenues are unleashing a nightmare. What must the US do to save its face yet surrender in the chip war? Well, that can be only done by saying that backing off in the chip war is the US policy now. Yet the reality is, the US is being made to surrender. Recently, US Commerce Chief Gina Raimondo said the US is only targeting narrow choke points and will not resort to broader restrictions. This tells the whole story. The US has finally given up in the chip war and is gradually portraying that it's surrendering intentionally. But what led the US to this breaking point? And what about its allies, which followed the US offensive policy against China? Welcome back to another exciting episode of our channel. Innovation Diary brings you China's innovation stories, projects, and growing influence in different parts of the world. If you are new to the channel and enjoy learning about fast-paced modernity, especially China's development and growing power, you will definitely find our videos intriguing. In this video, we will explain how the US is ending the chip war to save its face before it is defeated. Let's get started. China already knew where this chip war would go. It knew the US was the one to start it, and the US would be the one to end it. It's because no country has yet developed a robust supply chain and found a market bigger than that of China. This means that despite the US government export restrictions, the US chip companies cannot survive longer without China. Yet not only the US companies, but semiconductor companies of the US allies like Japan, South Korea, and the Netherlands are at stake. But as history says, the US never cares for its allies or their companies. However, it cannot survive a day if it does not listen to the private companies in the US. After struggling for over a year since export restrictions, now the US chip companies can no longer hold off from selling chips to China. It's because China is the world's factory of products and its demands for chips are not like any other country. The US and its allies' chip companies survived due to the revenues earned by selling to Chinese companies. Yet the US got carried away in emotions and thought it could bring broader restrictions. However, after these fantasies, it has fallen on the ground. The US chip companies have given an ultimatum to the Biden administration. Apparently, this ultimatum is to stop further export restrictions. However, secretly, this is more like a warning. Therefore, now, the US Secretary of Commerce declared the latest surrender of the US in the chip war. On Wednesday, the US Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, revealed their intentions of implementing narrow restrictions on the sale of advanced technology to China. Quite an intriguing gesture, as they pretend to take China's growth into account. They claim to be targeting so-called choke points to appease their own worries. But we know better. Yes, it's just a flimsy excuse to hinder China's technological growth. During a forum hosted by the American Enterprise Institute, Raimondo played the part of a concerned guardian of their nation's security. They speak of precision and well-defined limitations, but let's be honest, it's nothing more than an attempt to curtail China's technological progress while ensuring their own companies still milk profits from Chinese markets. Cunning maneuvers indeed, but now China won't fall for their tricks. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more videos about China's development, power, and influence on the world. Let's continue now. Earlier, in the US desperation to halt China's progress, it intensified its efforts to restrict exports to China. As expected, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Netherlands all lined up to dance to America's tune, obediently assisting the US in a futile chip war. Yet they forgot that the US changes its policies and leaves its allies suffering in the battles it itself had started. It makes deals with those against which its allies are fighting. It has done the same in the chip war as well. China, with its indomitable spirit, is destined to emerge as a self-sufficient global leader in crucial domains such as semiconductors, big data, robotics, and artificial intelligence. The US chip companies know this, and they are now getting closer to Chinese markets. It's because in 2022, China remained the single biggest semiconductor market, accounting for 1/3 of chip sales worth $180 billion. But foreign chip companies have nowhere to go. They are the ones losing the most in the chip war. In her latest talks, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce has declared that from now on, the chip bans on China will be superficial. All practical restrictions meant to make China suffer actually destroyed the U.S. semiconductor industry. In a rather comical display of desperation, the U.S. government is now scrambling to save face after it failed in the chip war against China. They have come up with what they call narrow choke points and implemented export restrictions in a feeble attempt to downplay their defeat. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, with a straight face, claims that their Chips and Science Act is all about addressing a supposed vulnerability in Asia. Literally, every country knows that in reality, it's nothing more than an attempt to cling to their diminishing technological prowess. The U.S. intelligence already told U.S. lawmakers that China is a threat and should be treated like one. The U.S. government boasts about a mere $53 billion thrown into domestic semiconductor production and research, trying to make it look like a grand investment. But in doing so, it's trying to fool everyone. It's because it's nothing compared to the $200 billion that companies have eagerly invested in the U.S. In other words, all these investments are worthless if access to Chinese markets is not given. Even U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen admits their investment curbs will be narrowly targeted, a sure sign of their desperation. Beijing can see this right through their faces. Now the world can see the U.S. selfish policy. It's planning to sell chips to China and make the chip war superficial so the U.S. chip companies do not lose revenues. However, the chip companies of its allies like Japan, the Netherlands, and South Korea have nowhere to turn to. It's because they followed the U.S. orders and became a party in the conflict. And now, even if the U.S. is trying to appease China and win back market share, sadly, these foreign chip companies are left in a nightmare. Samsung, the world's second biggest chip maker, is now facing a formidable threat. Its arrogance and misjudgments have finally caught up with it, and now it is facing bitter consequences. While they try to blame the weak global semiconductor demand, it's evident that their once profitable cash cow, the Chinese markets, is taking the brunt of their failures. In Q1 2023, Samsung's operating profits suffered a devastating blow, plummeting by a staggering 96% compared to the same period last year. It's their smallest profit in 14 years, a mere 640 billion Korean won in revenue, down 18% from the previous year. The humiliation they must be feeling as their earnings are slashed so mercilessly must be immense. But this is not it. While seeing its revenues declining, they are seeing the U.S. companies near shaking hands with Chinese firms. Yes, just a few months back, these U.S. companies were with them, facing losses together. But now, cleverly, they have changed sides and made foreign companies appear as the major parties in the conflict. It's quite intriguing to see how the U.S. and its allies find themselves entangled in a web of contradictions. As American chip companies make their way back to China, their once loyal allies' chip companies are left in a tough spot, feeling betrayed by the very nation they trusted. Meanwhile, ASML Holding, a significant player in the global chip-making industry, is walking a delicate tightrope, trying to balance uncertainty and ambitious aspirations. This Dutch company, ASML, takes pride in its crucial lithography machines, indispensable for semiconductor manufacturing, serving top customers like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, Samsung Electronics, and Intel. Like other foreign companies, ASML also followed the U.S. directions and banned sales of lithography machines to China. Now it's left to suffer. It's quite convenient to see them now attributing the delayed recovery in the semiconductor industry to macroeconomic uncertainties, using it as a rather feeble excuse. This should serve as a stern lesson for the U.S. and its allies. As they betray each other and hinder technological progress, China marches forward with unwavering determination. From now on, the U.S. allies should also be more cautious before following the U.S. in its conflicts with other countries. It's because nobody knows when the U.S. deserts them, caring for its own benefits and profits only. We would like to take a moment here and appreciate you all for commenting and sharing your opinions. Your insights always impress us. Now tell us, doesn't this subtle move suggest the U.S. has lost the chip war? Isn't it against what it had planned, which was not to sell chips at all to China? Let us know your take on what lessons should other countries learn from this futile chip war against China. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video, and subscribe to get exclusive videos about how phenomenally China is developing and growing its influence. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.